Welcome to the Ellevate podcast, conversations with women changing the face of business. And now your hosts, Kristy, Wallace and Maricella, Herrera.
Hello and welcome to the Ellevate podcast. This is your host, Kristy Wallace, with my co-host, Maricella Herrera. Hi, Maricella.
Hey, Kristy.
Did Sebastian fall asleep?
Oh, munchkin. Yeah.
Yep, I know. I knew it. Every time we tape the podcast intros, he falls asleep on us.
He's a little sweetheart.
So for those of our listeners who haven't been following along, Maricella is currently in London visiting family, which is amazing. She's got a really tight-knit family, and one she didn't get to see all that much during the pandemic. And so she's spending some time there. It's, I think, one of the beautiful things about the time in which we're living, when you can work remote, you can work from anywhere. You have a workplace that is centered around trust and responsibility, flexibility and communication. And it enabled many of our team members throughout the year to work from everywhere, from Australia to the UK, El Salvador, Mexico. I think we have someone who is going to be in Thailand, right? Coming up. Is that correct?
Correct. And we've had people work in Vietnam, in Paris. God, we've been all over the place.
Ellevate World Tour. We need one of those scratch-off maps where we can show where we've all been. But it's fitting because Ellevate is a global community, and we have community members from around the world. And certainly we also have team members who have been traveling and working and just, enjoying family and friends and building connections. And that's really important. And so Maricella is currently hanging out with her nephew, Sebastian, and he's been joining us on the podcast, and it's pretty special.
Yeah, he's a little 7-month-old munchkin, and I love him so much, and I want to put him in my bag and bring him back to New York, but I know I can't do
that. That would not work on many levels. So, yeah, let's not
go there.
Let's not go there. But I also think a big part of how this dynamic works, right? I mentioned trust, and trust is a big part of it. But it's really also about, I think, validation. I said communication, and we've really leaned into that at Ellevate. And we think a lot, and Maricella, you've actually been a huge driver of this, of how we do peer-to-peer recognition, in the sense of not just celebrating, the everyday work that people do, that tough conversation they handled, or that amazing presentation. We want to call it out. We want to give that type of validation and support. But it's also really helpful when you are in a remote environment and peers who may not, work on your team or, be in meetings with you throughout the day, they don't always know what we're accomplishing. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind. And that's been a big topic of conversation around remote work, which is how to stay present and to continue to be validated and acknowledged. And so we do a lot of that at Ellevate. We've got a million tools to really celebrate each other, and it's pretty spectacular. But we know that it's important. And so, Maricella, I'm calling you out for your work on that.
Thank you. That means a lot. That means a lot. I think it is so important not just to have that recognition, but to have that way, like you said, with this hybrid world and this online world where we all see each other through computers, it's important to be able to give a little bit more thought into how we relate. At Mobilize Women a few weeks ago, the panel I led, which was on why employees stay, trust was the number one thing. Trust came up so much because employees want to be treated like grown-ups. And that means, being able, like you were talking about, to work remote, being able to work at their leisure, at their time, but also know that they're going to be recognized, know that there's someone out there that values what they're doing. Is so important.
It is. And there was an article you and I were sharing with each other recently around this importance of peer-to-peer recognition. So it's saying that, employees really need to have those benefits. I mean, I think as we think about building cultures and building teams, that collaboration, that friendship, it's, there's personal connections that you're afraid get lost in a virtual space, or maybe, hybrid workforce or a distributed workforce. And recognition is a great way to continue to build those personal bonds. But the article also did say that many employees don't want to take time to figure out how to send recognition to a peer, right? It just is something that they don't want it to add to their to-do list necessarily. And so kind of creating that ecosystem where you don't even think about it. It's not a heavy lift. It's always top of mind because you're seeing other people do it. And it's a great way to just lean into, celebrating others. And so for our listeners here today, because I know you care about work and you care about your role within the workplace, adopt it in your organization or in your team. Start with your team. If you think once a week, who can you call out and just be like, great report, great presentation, great, just contribution to this meeting. I think it'll go a long way, and you'll be surprised about how it really can create those deeper bonds and connection.
Doesn't need to be a big deal. You can do it really quickly.
Absolutely. And we've been talking as well about our squads program. I would be remiss if I did not mention that. Again, applications will be closing soon. Please sign up for a squad. You will not regret it. Squads, if you're new to this podcast and this conversation, they're Ellevate's peer mentoring cohorts, so small groups of peers. If you're an executive, a manager, a business owner, you'll find a group for you. You meet for half an hour a week over 12 weeks, but it's really built on trust, just like we're talking about here. It's built on recognition. It's built on support, but also making sure that you get the advice to continue to thrive and grow in your career. It's a meaningful time to really build deeper connections. And I've certainly grown exponentially from it. It was something that really centered me during the pandemic and trying to lead a company during a time of uncertainty. As we are heading into a potential recession, I think many of us are wondering how to best navigate that, and what better way to have that conversation than to talk to peers, to learn from them and what they're doing. Many of us are also thinking about our own careers and where we're going. What is that next goal we're going to go after? If it's getting on a board, or, landing that TED Talk, or how do we navigate getting that promotion in our job? So this is a great time to hold yourself accountable, to make it a habit to connect with peers every week, to get their advice and perspective, and to ensure that you're continuing to go after your goals and your dreams. All right, today's conversation is with Yulia Mamonova. Yulia is head of content at Lemon.io. She's doing some great things around reshaping the world of fintech with her content marketing skills. Yulia also is Ukrainian. She's currently living outside of Ukraine with her family, but has been deeply touched both personally and through the work that she does by the war in Ukraine. It's an in-depth conversation that gives you a front seat look into the life of a Ukrainian, Ukrainian whose family's enlisting in the army, who is navigating how to communicate with others and how to advocate for her country and for her community during this time. Yulia shares many tips that are relevant for all of us, regardless of where you're located. And I hope you'll take some time with this conversation and then think proactively about what you can do to support others now and into the future.
Really looking forward to this one.
Let's get to my conversation with Yulia. Hello, Yulia, and welcome to the Ellevate podcast.
Hi, Kristy. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yulia, you have a really important and powerful story to tell, and we would love to give you some space for that. So would you mind sharing with our audience a bit about you and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. So I am from Ukraine, born and raised in Ukraine, but I currently live in Israel. We moved here 4 years ago, and I work as a head of content at an IT company, a Ukrainian IT company called Lemonayo. And I am also a full-time homeschooling mom for a very cute little toddler named Jeremy. I'm working and managing a team of content specialists, and I'm trying to raise this amazing human and educate him and just train him up and build up his character. Trying to have it all. Yeah.
Two very, very important things. What led to the move to Israel?
Well, it was actually the dream of my husband because his family is Jewish, and he always felt this deep connection with his ancestors, and he always wanted to live where his people live. And he proposed to me, and immediately after that, we established that once we get a chance, we're gonna move to his to the home of his ancestors. And that's what we did 4 years ago. And our son was already born here, so he is born and raised Israeli. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So how is it working for a company that's based in the Ukraine? What has your experience been like, especially over the past couple of months with everything that's happening and you as Ukrainian not being there? I mean, how are you feeling on a personal level? What are the impacts you're seeing within your organization?
Mm-hmm. Well, ever since the war broke out, it's been very emotional and difficult for everyone in Ukraine. I would say that the most difficult were the couple of the first few weeks. That's when my father decided to join the army, and he is one of the Ukrainian defenders right now. And so that's been very emotional for me. And I've also, I think, two of our employees in the company that I'm working for, Lemonayo, they had joined the Ukrainian Defense Forces as well. In fact, our chief marketing officer he is one of the defenders right now. He's a paramedic, and he's in the south. And one of our developers, in-house developers, he is in, I think he's somewhere in the east. Also fighting for the freedom of Ukraine. So it's been, I don't think there is a single person in Ukraine right now who doesn't have someone fighting or protecting or volunteering or risking their lives and sacrificing so much to help and protect our country and our people. So I think it has been very difficult for everyone. But what I see is that this war has united Ukrainians so much. One of the things that I see and that it inspires me a lot is that our company is donating all of our profits to the army, and they are donating all of the money that we make on top of salaries and all of those expenses. They are donating them to needs of specific people, not necessarily organizations, but are helping financially support our defenders or other organizations that try and supply people actively fighting or medics. They try and supply them with necessary equipment or medicine or whatever they need right now. So, and our company is just one of the many, many other companies that stood up, and they are now actively fighting too. Maybe not with with the arms, but they are protecting our country as well, financially covering and meeting the needs of those who are on the front line right now of Ukraine.
How do you talk to your workforce about this? It's something that is coming up more and more in the United States around, how
Mm-hmm.
companies take a stand, leaders, and how leaders, connect with their workforce and connect with society and what's happening. And this is, this is a tragic moment, but a unique moment in time where, there's not necessarily that framework. And so how do you see your leaders, connecting with your team? How big is your organization, and how are you connecting with everyone and staying, in a place where you can support them, and, also straddling this line between keeping the business going and knowing that, the success of the business then yields more support for the troops and for the organizations that you're supporting. It's
Mm-hmm.
all quite complicated, to think about the dynamics of this, and what are some of the lessons learned during this time.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a great question. It's a very unique time for everyone, I think, not just for Ukrainians. But yeah, I think that my company did a lot. They put their heart into protecting us and doing as much as they can to reach out and make sure that our well-being is fine and that our most basic needs are met, because for a lot of people that is a problem right now. In some of the occupied cities, people don't have food, and it's just scary to think about that. And before the war started, our company had like an emergency plan. Like what would we do if it did happen? Nobody actually expected it to happen. We suspected, but nobody, it's just difficult to think that this might happen in our age. But yeah, so they had an emergency plan, and they had like an office, like headquarters to the west of in the west of Ukraine, where everybody who wanted to like escape or who wasn't safe in the cities where they like initially lived, they could just go to Lviv. That's the city in western Ukraine. That's where the headquarters are, and so they could just stay there, and our company helped them find shelter, and they would accommodate their needs. Um, I know that a lot of companies they moved their offices to the west as well, and they rented out like hotels for their employees and their families to just stay in there and work. Um, our company also hired, like they have this special fund right now for psychological consultations for psychological help for our employees. So if I don't feel safe, or I just need someone to talk to, or if I think I could benefit from like therapy right now. So my company has this designated funds for me to to use to talk to a professional. And I think what also helped is that there was like absolutely no pressure on employees to get back to work and like get back on their feet and start working right away. Everybody knew that what's happening is not okay, and we had just to process it. And even if some of us that were like in a relatively safe zone, there is no safe zone in Ukraine right now because like the Russians are firing rockets everywhere, all over Ukraine, on crazy distances. So there is no like a safe place. But even those that were in like relatively safe places, they knew that they could take a day off whenever they needed, and that their well-being was put first before business and before their responsibilities. So that helped everybody just accommodate and switch pace and start over whenever they were ready. And surprisingly, from business perspective, it didn't hurt our business. It just built up trust, and it helped people like recover and start over when they were ready. In fact, this March, it was the first month of war in Ukraine, and it was the record month for us, we made like the record amount of GMV. I think it was 1.2 million GMV this month. And it was despite the fact that many people were displaced, and we had to rethink a lot of our strategies because the developers that we were selling, that we were, selling, they were not as available as we'd hoped they would be. Plus, there was this mass mobilization. So we had to rethink all of our strategies and look for extra resources outside of Ukraine. And despite all that, we made 1.2 million in GMV, and that was like a historic best for our company. So I think just this care and that the trust that employees could put in their managers, it really helped bring us all closer together, and it helped us, do better as a team, if it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Who are some of your clients?
Among our clients, well, we are mostly working with startups that have just raised funding, and so there aren't that many big names, but they are very prospective. So I would say that among our clients is TV Scientific, for instance. It's a company that they offer like satellite photos on demand, which I think is a fantastic idea. So we have a lot of companies that are very super innovative, and they're just now starting to gain their to market their name and get out there.
And where are they typically based?
Oh, they are based. We're working with the United States, Canada, Australia. Yeah, those are our three main countries that we are working with.
How have you seen your clients support your organization during this time?
Yeah, it was incredible. I think I cried at least 5 times. Receiving their messages was really heartwarming. Among all the disbelief and craziness that was happening, seeing their unwavering support was amazing. They had some of our clients agreed. Well, they didn't agree. They suggested to keep paying to their developers. They were based in Ukraine, even though they knew that the developers might not deliver what they agreed on in the first weeks, because everybody was just trying to figure out what to do, where to go, like what's next. So they paid their salaries, and they, I think they became our most fierce advocates while our marketing department was just trying to figure out the next steps. Our clients stepped in, and they spread the news about us, and they recommended us to their clients, to their friends, and to their colleagues, networks. They did everything they could to support us, and so that was really amazing to see that level of empathy to us.
That is amazing. What? So you mentioned that your father enlisted in to fight.
Mm-hmm.
How are you able to stay in touch with him and with your family that's still in the Ukraine?
Mm-hmm. I don't think we are using several like super encrypted apps that we are like for communication, just to be sure that he is alive. He cannot share a lot of details, so I basically just know the region where he is in right now, and I don't know many details about him. But we talk every couple of days if he gets a chance. Several times he was sent to a hot zone, and we couldn't talk because he had to leave his phone and disconnect, and he was unavailable for a couple of days. So and that was very scary, because at that time the Russians tried to attack the capital, and that's where my father was. So I think there were a few episodes when we couldn't talk for a few days, but other than that, we are still talking. Um, and well, he's sharing some personal things, and he cannot share a lot of details related to his location or what he's doing, or the plans of their like the plans of their um, group. I'm not really good with the military terminology, but yeah, he's sharing some things, and he's hopeful.
What did your dad do before he enlisted?
Well, my father is in design. He used to do interior design for quite some time, and yeah, so enlisting was definitely not on the agenda. He's not a professional military, um, and he really misses what he was doing before, and he's already hopeful to see Ukraine win, so that he can go back and do what he's best at.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you mentioned a developer and head of marketing, and your dad who's a interior design. I mean, it's everyone
Mhm.
coming together and fighting for what they believe in. What about your other family and friends in Ukraine? Have you been able to stay in touch with them, and how's everyone doing?
Yeah, they're they're safe for now. One side, like my husband's family, they're in Western Ukraine right now, and they're safe. Well, as much as it can be safe right now in Ukraine. They had several explosions in their city just a few days ago, but they are safe, and that's the most important thing. And they are already looking forward to going back to Kiev. It's the capital of Ukraine, and that's where they are from. And they are really hopeful they can go back there within the next couple of days. Yeah, so they want to go back to their life. And my mom and my brother, they are in central Ukraine. They're like in between all the regions where the fighting was. So there was no fighting where they live. There were a few explosions in the neighboring towns, but they are safe. They have to go to the shelter, run to the shelter a couple times every night, but other than that, they're safe. Yeah, and they're. My mom is looking forward to coming and meeting her grandson. I think the most it's the thing that was the most disappointing to her, that she couldn't go and visit us this spring, and that was her big plan, to come and see her grandson. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure. What are ways that we can support you and support the people in Ukraine and do more? I think in the United States, it's obviously it's top of mind for all of us, but feeling so removed from it, and there's certainly money and aid, and you mentioned some organizations that you're supporting, but what can we do?
Um, I would say that apart from everything you said, besides everything you said, one of the things that I am doing is I am talking to different companies that still haven't left Russia, and they're still supporting their economy. And basically, they're equipping their troops to fight, kill, torture, and rape Ukrainians. And because they're pumping millions of dollars into their economy, and they're using that money to against Ukrainians. Then, so what I am doing, I'm talking to a lot of American and European companies that still haven't left, and so I think raising awareness about these companies, and like talking to them and explaining the situation to them, and making sure that they know we see them, and that it's inhumane, I would say. Like it's to still stay in a and do business with the country that started an unprovoked war, and that are now killing innocent children. And we have a lot of evidence supporting rape of toddlers. They're raping toddlers, and they're doing horrible things. So for me, it's I think one of the things I can do, and I encourage others to do, and my American friends too, is like talk, raise awareness, and encourage these companies to leave Russia. And so that way we can put pressure on their economy, and then this would help us prevent them from buying more weapons, deadly weapons they are using to kill Ukrainians. And we put pressure on them. And when they feel that pressure, and when they open the fridge and it's empty, maybe they'll start doing something from within the country. And that would help us also put an end to the war.
Who are some of those companies? So I know McDonald's has sold off its interest in Ukraine. Starbucks recently announced they did that as well. There's been some of the hotels, but like, who should we direct our energy at?
Well, from the recent companies that I talked to, there were Hard Rock Cafe, Oriflame, Starbucks. Starbucks has announced its plans to exit Russia. I would say like the major companies like Nestle. So I think Nestle, they promised to leave Russia, but it was just an empty promise, and we don't see any any movements indicating that they are doing something to actually exit Russia, only empty promises. And since they are among those companies that are pumping like literally billions, millions into their economy, so I would say Nestle is one of those companies. And Shan, what else? Johnson and Johnson, SC Johnson, I think that's the name of the company. It's like a small local family company.
No, it's really helpful because we don't, this is all nuanced, right? In the sense that this unjust war, it's impacting individuals in terms of, their safety, their mental and emotional health, their economic well-being, where they live, the risks that they're taking. Like there's so many layers of impact here, and oftentimes it can feel how do I do something about this? And so in this conversation, which I really appreciate Yulia talking about, what companies can do, supporting organizations based in the Ukraine, what we can do in terms of donating money to support Ukrainians, how we can use our voice and advocate for companies like the ones you mentioned, leaving Russia. There's just listening to this story and taking this in and saying to yourself, okay, what am I going to do today to support Ukrainians? And so all of this is really important for us to hear, because storytelling matters. And the more it doesn't just be a blip on the news screen, but it's a real story about real humans who are impacted every day, and knowing that there's something we can each do to create change.
Yeah, I think this war has changed how I perceive myself, like as a tiny little human in this huge world. It helped me see that I have a voice, and I can talk to big companies, and they respond and they hear you. I've had a couple of conversations with managers and influential people from big companies, and it helped me see that they hear you. And also, as a marketer, I know that like getting rid of, or like trying to get rid of bloodstains on your reputation will cost you millions of dollars, and it will take you a long time. So for them, it's sometimes it makes more sense to lose money and leave Russia than to argue or ignore, like Henkel did for a long time, and just pretend that nothing is happening, or even use some made up excuses to stay there, saying that by staying there, they're also taking care of, civilians in Russia. But I doubt that's the main reason. And when you keep talking to them and they see that there are a lot of people that demand you to give reports and like to explain and and they ask you like really important questions about your values that you're preaching through your platforms, and then it turns out that you support terrorism and that you support war, and you just ignore the reality, and it's difficult to to stay true to what you preach through your brand, and so it's easier to just leave Russia and regain the trust of your customers. So yeah, I think among other companies that are still there are like Hilton and Hyatt. That's what you mentioned, like the hotels. And surprisingly, Young Living is still there. Subway, Mondelez. I'm sure I'm saying it wrong, but Procter and Gamble. And it changed for me and my family. We are no longer buying all of these, like products that we used to buy. It takes, and we are, educating our people in our environment, that we are teaching them that since these companies still haven't left, it would be wise not to buy their products, and so that we as their customers, we also put pressure on them, and that might motivate them to leave. And I also read a research that says that that it is proven that it's right now it is much wiser and makes more business sense for companies to leave Russia than to stay there, because they're actually bleeding money because people refuse to buy them, and they're losing a lot of their profits just by staying there, even though they think that would be like a good and a logical business move. In fact, they're losing money. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for all of this and for sharing your story with us. And, I can pledge for myself and for our community and listeners that we will stand in solidarity with you and take action every day through all of these ways that you are illustrating, and to support the people of Ukraine during this, tragic time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
All right, and welcome back, Maricella. What did you think?
It's amazing. And, we always talk about action. It's inspiring me to act. We all can do something, right? So.
Yes, we can all do something. So please, all of our listeners, you're proactive. You want to create change. Let's do it. Let's do it. And if you need some more advice, some real-time advice. I mean, the podcast is inspiring. You get to hear from others in these conversations, but sometimes you need that advice to go deeper. You want to be able to talk to someone and share your specific situation and get real-time advice that's relevant to you, that you can immediately take action on. So if that's where you are, I'd encourage you to come to one of our upcoming roundtables. At our Rising Leaders Roundtable, we will be talking about building influence in your company. So if you are inspired by this podcast and you want to figure out how to really build influence and change within your organization, then attend the Rising Leaders Roundtable. It is interactive, it's engaging, it's putting you first and making sure that you're getting exactly what you need from that conversation. Our Entrepreneurs Roundtable is focusing on networking, and we've been talking a lot about the importance of that. But this is a great time to meet our entrepreneur community, to really build your connections, which open doors to opportunities, advice, and more. So attend an upcoming Entrepreneur Roundtable to meet our community firsthand. And we need to talk about our other firsts. Some great firsts are happening in the world where women are really changing the status quo and breaking those glass ceilings. So Jennifer Coe will become the first woman and first person of color to lead the Chicago Sun-Times.
Linda Burney became the first woman to serve as Minister for Indigenous Australians.
Justine Lindsay became the NFL's first openly trans cheerleader.
Bronwyn Eyre became the first woman Minister of Justice and Attorney General in Saskatchewan Province, Canada.
Sheikha Moza bin Marwan became the first woman to pilot an AW609 tilt rotor.
That's exciting.
Yes.
Helen Lofthouse became the first female CEO of ASX.
All right, so lots of great firsts to celebrate. Keep yours coming. We love hearing from you on social, so feel free to tag Ellevate on any channel, #EllevatePod, and share your firsts or someone who's inspired you this week. We just talked all about, peer validation and giving that type of positive feedback. So shout someone out, tag us. We'll talk about it on the next podcast. And next week we will be in conversation with Michelle Campbell. Michelle is a global program and project manager experienced in managing strategic programs and projects aimed at revenue growth, cost reduction, client satisfaction, governance, and transformation at business and enterprise levels. I think a really important conversation as we are approaching the second half of 2022, depending on your fiscal cycle. If you manage a P&L, manage a company, or just looking at your contributions to your organization, these are great topics around growth of revenue, cost reduction, strategic programs and projects aimed at transforming business. We cannot wait to tap into Michelle's insights, and we look forward to having you join us back here next week on the Ellevate podcast.
Thanks so much for listening to Ellevate. If you like what you hear, help a girl out. Subscribe to the Ellevate podcast on iTunes. Give us 5 stars and share your review. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at EllevateNTWK, that's Ellevate Network, and become a member. You can learn all about membership and all the great things that Ellevate Network is doing at our website, www.ellevatenetwork.com. That's ELLEVATE network.com. And special thanks to our producer, Catherine Heller. She rocks. And to our voiceover artist, Rachel Griesinger. Thanks so much, and join us next week.